One of the very first things I read is that there was a little tiny minor brush fire on the outskirts of town in the morning, and that firefighters went and put that out in probably in a couple minutes and left it. And from what I saw from one source, they're supposed to leave somebody there to observe it for the next, say, 24 hours or something, instead of just leaving. They just left it entirely unattended, and that was suspicious to people.
All right, back with Christian.
Aloha, everyone.
So, I didn't know if I told you we had a power outage tonight.
Yep.
And I live in California, Central California, so we're experiencing a lot of interesting weather. I don't live close to the coast, right? Even though I live in California, I live in the middle, right in the middle, both north, south, east, west, right in the middle. So I've got the Sierra Nevadas are about an hour drive out, an hour and 20 minutes east of me. And the coast is like an hour and 20 minutes west of me. Well, about a 2-hour drive west of me. So we experienced some a tidbit of hurricane weather today.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had that going on. My brother lives up north. There's fires going on too. You know that, right? In California.
Well, yeah.
And also we are going to talk about I always want to call it Lahaina. It's not
Lahaina.
Lahaina, the island of Lahaina.
Well, it's the town of Lahaina on the island of Maui.
I mean, sorry, the town. That's what I meant. The town of Lahaina on the island of Maui.
Yep.
I have never been to Hawaii. My brother goes there every year. He and his wife surf. Anyway, Christian, you take it away. We're going to talk about a couple things. You know the place very well. You're wearing a shirt. Probably not by coincidence.
This was planned.
Yes.
In solidarity with the Hawaiian people, the Kama'aina there.
I'm going to, so I'm kind of tired. I've had a long day. You kind of have too. I've done a lot of, it's just been a long day, I think, for a lot of us. You take it away. We're going to talk about a couple things, the spiritual aspects of what's going on and what you know about it. And also, some mysterious things as well. You go ahead and roll it, brother. I'm going to grab me some water, but you go ahead and talk. Okay. I can hear you.
Okay. Well, and I just want to give some quick background that I went to the island of Oahu, where I attended Brigham Young University of Hawaii. I did graduate from there with a bachelor's degree in psychology. I then visited Maui right after my graduation and before leaving Hawaii to come back to California. I visited Maui for the first time. My father showed me around much of the island in our quick little day trip. And then a couple of years later, I took a trip there myself and stayed in Lahaina. And then a couple of years after that, I went again and stayed in Lahaina again for another Maui trip, and then had what I would call a spiritual experience there on my 2007 trip to Maui that can be touched on later. But I also know that there's a lot of church history in Hawaii and on Maui. We heard things in General Conference, stories about Joseph F. Smith serving there when he was 15 years old. George Q. Cannon, who was in the first presidency to 4 different presidents of the church, served there. I did a quick little search on Lahaina in the Gospel Link Deseret Book Library online, and there were a lot of church history references. I just want to read one of those before moving on to the other things. This is from a book called Unto the Islands of the Sea, A History of the Latter-day Saints in the Pacific. And it's talking mainly about George Q. Cannon and his mission there. And it says, the doctrine that the Hawaiian people and all other Polynesians are heirs to the blessings promised to the posterity of Abraham had its origin through George Q. Cannon. While he was at Lahaina, he received a knowledge directly from the Lord that the Hawaiians were of the house of Israel. From this time on, Elder Cannon and his associates began to teach that the Hawaiian people were an offshoot branch of Israel through the posterity of Lehi, the Book of Mormon prophet.
That's amazing stuff there. Okay.
And there's all sorts of talk about what caused the fire. That's basically what we're going to talk about and for about 10 minutes. Lots of talk. I've been following quite a bit of it. Some of it is bordering on, theory. You can bleep that out if you need to. Some of it is more like, just some would say a rational explanation. I've gone through a lot of the content, the conjecture, and I haven't.
So what are people saying? I haven't been keeping up that much on I know you talked about JP Sears talking about it earlier today, that the fires were started. This isn't the first time I've heard something like this. We heard something on a smaller scale a few years ago.
Yep.
When not as many people were going down rabbit holes.
Yep.
I would say 4 or 5 years ago. Do you remember the fire we had up in Northern California?
Yeah. The Paradise one?
Yes. Yep. The Paradise fire. This is what it reminds me of. But but it's gotten more mainstream because ever since whose island?
Yep.
Fantasy Island or what was the island in Pinocchio?
Technically called Little St. James Island, but it got a different name later on.
What, the Pinocchio Island?
Well, yeah.
No, what did they call it? Pleasure Island. Yeah. Ever since that, and all of that has come out about Epstein and the island and all that stuff, more people look at conspiracies and go, it's possible. It's 5 years ago, not so many people. There was a smaller group, and even before that, like 2015, it was almost considered fringy to think that way. Not anymore, is it?
Correct.
Yeah. So go ahead. What's going on? This reminds me exactly of it reminds me of Paradise.
Yeah.
No. Was it Paradise, California?
Yeah, and Jared's mentioned Paradise and Lahaina, both the fires, and I think a couple of his videos likening them to each other.
Yeah.
So it definitely looks like it. If you look at aerial shots of the two, there you can see houses and cars burn out, but trees still standing, things like that. So there's some visual similarities between those two incidents. I don't, everybody always has to stop short of being gullible and believing every theory that's out there. But I also don't feel people should go to the other extreme and say they disbelieve everything. Sometimes I think that there's stuff that's just reported, and you got to be like, oh, people are reporting this. So the first thing that I'll mention with this Maui fire is that there were residents in Lahaina that have reported that before the fire got really bad, they tried to leave, but were confronted by police roadblocks telling them to go back home.
Wow. Well, and then I heard that Oprah Winfrey was there. There's been a lot of pushback on Oprah lately.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
And I guess she came out. I don't know what her motives are. I'm not going to try to guess because I don't know Oprah personally, but I've seen a lot of commentators lately and YouTubers speak negatively of her, and I guess she has property there, and it was untouched.
Yes, her home and the homes of some other billionaires that had mega mansions there, somehow their property was untouched while the common people had theirs just torched. Could that have been nature? Possibly, but
Right.
it's worth observing and noticing. Okay,
Yeah,
so let's look at
absolutely.
this list, and I'm just going to go down. It's the list point by point. It said fire hydrants were dry. I heard about things like the water getting turned off, so people couldn't even get their hose and kind of spray, some sort of liquid line of defense around their house. Um, they that was an issue. That several people reported, not just one and not just hearsay. The next thing on the list is fire marshals were out of town that night. Why were they out of town that same night that was
Yeah,
happening?
right.
The mayor and the governor were out of town. Okay, and then it says people who were trying to evacuate were told it was not time to evacuate and to turn around back into the fire. And that numerous people were reporting that. There was no
Wow.
cops on bullhorns, telling people to grab their necessities and leave. There were no firefighters in the streets. One of the very first things I read is that there was a little tiny minor brush fire on the outskirts of town in the morning, and that firefighters went and put that out in probably in a couple minutes and left it. And from what I saw from one source, they're supposed to leave somebody there to observe it for the next, say, 24 hours or something, instead of just leaving. They just left it entirely unattended, and that was suspicious to people.
Right.
They have the most robust emergency siren system in the world, and it didn't sound for this emergency.
Are you kidding me?
Nope.
Wow.
Also reported by numerous sources. There was no warnings whatsoever. There were anomalies with reported wind directions that don't scientifically add up. Tourists were evacuated by bus, but locals were locked in and told they can't get back in if they leave.
Let me ask you something just real quick. Do you think it has something to do with globalists, like globalism, and trying to, well, I mean, there has been talk in the last few years about like Zuckerberg and
Yeah,
but also what's his name? I'm not thinking straight.
Bill Gates.
Yeah, Bill Gates, Microsoft, uh, buying up land
Yeah.
all over the United States,
Well,
and
that's
then
been
just
going on before this. So then when this happens, it kind of lends credence to this
right,
idea that they're trying for something.
and just preaching the global warming thing, which is strange because it's either warming or it's cooling, and then they change
Yeah.
it to climate change. They don't even say global warming that much. But do you think this has something to do with people of that ilk?
I would lean towards a yes.
But it's funny how that used to people would say you were crazy, that you were nuts if you talked like that. I was one of them. People thought I was nuts when I would talk about conspiracies that came true. I
Well, they
mean
had a
that
conference there in January on the island about how they wanted to turn Lahaina into a 15-minute smart city.
wow. What does that mean?
It's the thing where I believe it's the globalist idea where they're trying to say everybody should live in a 15-minute smart city that we set up. And
Oh,
uh,
kind of like what they want to do in the like put with sustainable development and uh agenda 2030.
yeah,
Well,
all that stuff. Yeah,
yeah, making sustainable cities where people are
which
riding bikes and
they
they're
present
busing and
something that it sounds good on the surface.
right. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. So they wanted to do almost like a little project city, or like a trial and error kind of thing, or a
Yeah,
test
and then
city,
right after,
a pilot city.
yeah, yeah, and a few months after they talked about doing it, this happens, and then one of the things that's occurring is these residents of Lahaina that have had, family roots there for decades and centuries are trying to hold on to their land, and they've been offered money to sell and move, but they just like their home, you know. They don't want to move because somebody that has more money than them
Right.
wants to buy them out. And so they've been resisting these offers for a long time. And now that this fire has hit and they are trying to rebuild, and first they just got to get into a good mental state, and there's all sorts of things they have to do. But in the middle of their trauma, there are people calling them up, making lowball offers on their land.
Oh
Like,
my goodness.
like
So
they're not
are
even
you,
getting a chance to think straight.
so what is it? Is it implied by some that those are plants? Like those are people that are part of that agenda and they're calling, there's just people that have money, but they're planted there to do that?
I don't know the answer, but it seems to be circumstances seem to indicate that.
Okay.
They kind of point that direction. But
Interesting.
but even before the fire, I've known for years, largely from my time at BYU Hawaii, that there are people that don't respect the Hawaiian land and culture and people that just want them out so that the billionaires elite can do their thing with that land.
I mean, we haven't really gotten into major detail about it. What is JP saying? What are others saying? Maybe that he's talked about that. Do they want the island of Hawaii? I mean, do they want all the islands? Is it to turn the
Yeah,
islands into something?
yeah.
Like what have they said? What's the buzz about? I mean, what's
It,
the
it
biggest
kind of their
agenda
own
there?
place where they set the rules, they do things their way.
Oh,
The Hawaiian
crazy.
culture is gone. It's just their plot of land to do their island thing, their
Just
globalist
a
thing.
slow, methodical takeover.
Yeah, and I would, the last 8 years, I would tell my wife about, there's people trying to take over Hawaii
Now, what made you say that?
just because of what I learned while I was attending college there.
Scary stuff, man. And the scariest part is when people don't believe you and
And what,
people feel alone. When people don't believe these people that are, that are basically proverbially screaming at the top of their lungs
yeah,
and saying, they're the ones in that situation and they know, they feel it, they recognize it. The same thing with is it Paradise, California? Is that what I'm thinking of?
yeah, yeah,
The same thing with Paradise. People are like, look, I saw this. I know it's not natural the way these fires are burning. They're so
yeah.
methodical. They're so structured. They're following an ominous path and creating, it's not, but I think they do it at a certain time where there are high winds and maybe some of it is caused by natural disasters, so that they can throw in, so they can say things like you're crazy. You know what I mean?
I do think that could be the case. And one of the other things that was reported very early on is, and it's very similar to the big event that happened almost 22 years ago. The big one, the big event,
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
super
I
big
got you.
one.
I got
There
you.
were people that reported hearing bombs
Wow.
in the buildings, and
Oh no, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm blanking out because I'm so tired.
they
Uh
reported hearing the bombs go off at different levels.
like implosions and methodic, structured explosions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And then with Lahaina a week ago, people were saying, without even, it was one of the very earliest things, people were reporting hearing bombs in the downtown area of Lahaina.
I don't doubt it. I mean, but what are you
Now,
gonna do?
was it some power thing in a building going off? Maybe. I definitely feel like that could be a possibility. It hits the main power line, and the power things behind the buildings that explode. Maybe.
Yeah.
Got to hold that out as a possibility. So here's the next thing on the list. It says school was canceled. Elementary school children were sent home while their parents were at work. I can hardly read the next part. Hundreds of children burned alive.
That's horrible.
I,
What?
like, that's the,
Okay, wait
probably
a
the
minute.
worst thing out of all of this.
All right, we're back. Okay, you're gonna have to back up and not say that because I'm
Okay,
gonna have to cut that part out. Let's just say, is that something I can put up where they can read it? Okay.
it's in the
Uh,
JP video.
oh, it is. Okay. Okay. So but this isn't being reported.
Right now, the National Guard and stuff are telling people they have to stay out of Lahaina until they go through every house and check who might be still there. So there's still this process that they have to go through.
No, what I'm saying is as far as casualties, are they talking about this or is this something that's
They're not really talking about it, but I don't know how they can avoid it.
so this isn't a conspiracy. This really did happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
parents were at work and then they couldn't go back because the fire hit, but their kids were home in the fire. And that's the thing that's going to really upset a lot of people and get them to take certain things more seriously. So here's a little bit of hope from the Doctrine and Covenants and relevant words from Joseph Smith that are in our scriptures. I tried to start with the spiritual thought before we got to secular stuff. I'm wanting to end with a
right.
spiritual
No,
thought.
you did, and that's great. I just thought we could like go ahead and end also. Go ahead.
And then, so Doctrine and Covenants 123, verses 13 to 14, it says, we should waste and wear out our lives in bringing to light all the hidden things of darkness. These
Amen.
should then be attended to with great earnestness.
And
Done.
also, I've got Moses chapter 5, verse 51 to remember
Mm.
that for from the days of Cain, there was a secret combination, and their works were in the dark, and they knew every man his brother. This war is continuing, brothers and sisters, from the other side, isn't it, Christian?
Yeah, and we need to bring darkness into the light, shed a light on it.
Yep. Second Nephi chapter 10, verse 15. Wherefore, for this cause, that my covenants might be fulfilled, I have made unto the children of men that I will do unto them while they are in the flesh. I must needs, did I read that right? Wherefore, for this cause, that my covenants may be fulfilled, which I have made unto the children of men, that I will do unto them while they are in the flesh, I must needs destroy the secret works of darkness and of murders and of abominations.
Yeah.
And
Well,
there's many more.
I just want to close with a Hawaiian thank you. The word is mahalo, mahalo to everyone. And
Mahalo.
we are praying for Maui and Lahaina. They need help. Please think about ways each individual can help.